Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of Torah from the Kotel. I'm Rabbi David Katz with
The Ari Lewis Show.
As always. All right, we are under extreme conditions, and almost like a football game with a snow report, right? It's like extreme weather conditions.
Yeah, there are two shears going on tonight here.
That's right. We have I believe the Vishnitzer Rebbe is in the house tonight. So, all right, we are picking up from where we left off before the holiday. I don't know, when was it? After Rosh Hashanah, I think?
It was before
Yom Kippur.
Wednesday after Rosh Hashanah.
Right. So in that shir, if you remember, you can visit it on YouTube. Our MVP in the lineup, Ari Lewis, had a great kasha that I'm gonna give a review, and then we'll go with Ari's kasha, right? Because it's the same thing.
This whole shir was set up by my one question.
That's right. The whole shir is a response to Ari Lewis show. We gave actually it was actually kind of like the third part 3. We had a shir on Rabbi Nachman's tzaddik. What was that about? Was it talking?
It led to how do you define a tzaddik, right?
Right, but that was the second one. The first year was Rabbi Nachman's tzaddik, about how the tzaddik makes geirim.
Yeah.
And in that we defined the tzaddik from Vayikra 1932 and 33. Right, the tzaddik was this Talmud Chacham.
Yeah.
And we had beef and flack over that, and then we had the part 2, which was explaining what exactly is a tzaddik.
Right.
And why I decided to call it Talmud Chacham. I'm not going to review that whole shir and on one foot. If you want to watch it on YouTube, it is on YouTube. In short, it's somebody who has such a high chachma. It's not your run-of-the-mill Talmud Chacham Torah scholar. It's like a rebbe like we have here tonight. So a real tzaddik that has real chachma, that understands the Eibishter on a very high level, and even though it borrows the same lashon as Talmud Chacham, it's a much higher darga. The Havamina, which generally comes from the Sefer Tanya, but not the Sefer Tanya itself, how it's misquoted and misrepresented, is that there is such a thing as a tzaddik who never sins.
Right.
That's how the Tanya is built in its communities, and the Tanya does not say that explicitly. We covered that in the last year. Please visit that on YouTube as well.
Right.
Ari Lewis, do you remember your question?
Well, of course. The question is, the Talmud apparently says there were 4 people who never sinned: Binyamin, Amram, Yishai, and another one of King David's brothers, I believe.
One of his sons.
One of his sons.
Yeah.
So the question is, if there's only 4 people who never sinned, what does that mean exactly?
What Gemara is that?
I'm not sure the exact source.
Thank God for Rabbi David Katz. I brought the Gemara here.
Okay, good.
Just for you.
Okay, cool.
Just for you.
Because I've heard this. It's nice to know the source.
Because that was how we had the interjection the last year.
Right. Because there's a bunch of things going on. For example, if a guy sits around all day and does nothing,
right,
he's not sinning, but is that good?
Right.
And what does that mean?
Right. So we said that there was the concept of a tzaddik, whether he sins or not. Ari had his question, and I responded with, there's no person so righteous in the world that doesn't sin. And then you said, but the Gemara says.
Right, the
and
4.
then I said, next show, we will do Ari's question. I'm a man of my word. You're an honorable man yourself.
Yeah, and I also want to clarify, actually, in my opinion, if a guy sits around and does nothing, he is sinning. He's wasting life and wasting time.
We're going to find out if that's correct.
All right.
Mamish, that's what we're going to find out.
All right.
So I went home.
I'm going to go with me. I hope I assume I'm correct.
I went home and checked this out. And it comes in 2 Gemaras. Bava Basra 17a. I think that's what I have here. Yeah, I have the Old Faithful here. And Shabbos 55b. It's the same sugya in 2 different Gemaras.
Okay.
All right. So that we've now done review on the Tzaddik Shirim from Rabbi Nachman. We've introduced Ari's question, and I'm just going to follow the thread of the notes. All right. Hold on. I want to really be mockbeat on the notes here. All right, so if you remember, Ari, my question to you, on one foot back then, which lashon of sin was mentioned either in the Gemara or in any of these sugyas that we discussed of this concept of a tzaddik who sins or doesn't sin? And my challenge to you specifically, which kind of lashon of sin was used?
It was, I forget the name, but it was the type that's the root of it, right?
Well, what we said was we don't know.
Oh, okay.
I think you said chet.
Okay, that's
And then
right.
I said, how do you know it's not avon?
Right,
And then I explained avon as Ben and Jerry's ice cream. My famous story.
where you go in on the first time.
By accident, you found it on against your diet.
Yeah.
And then every Friday ever since, you accidentally woke up 4 hours late for Shabbos.
Right, to
And
make
you
sure
had
to go to the store that had it.
Right. So that's
Yeah.
that's a learned sinning behavior of avon, right?
A vote is more routine.
Right. Well, it's a learned behavioral sin, right? So now, you should thoroughly not know if it's chet or avon. I should have confused your mind enough to know that, right?
Right.
So then people say, like, you're confusing, da-da-da-da. It always uses these different terms. Read through Tehillim, and you'll see how many times David HaMelech mentions chet, and how many times David HaMelech mentions avon. Different context, different mashmut, different everything. They're different worlds. The different types of sin, different lashon hakodesh. It's different.
Right.
So now the last part of setting this up was, I told you when I looked this up, I was going to find out which lashon of chet was in the dictum of the 4 men that didn't sin, or any of the greater commentaries concerning this. Right? Okay. What do you? I'm going to add just as on one foot. What do you think it says in Bava Basra 17a?
About with the 4 men that
Which
never
lashon
sinned.
of sin?
Right. I feel like it's chet, not a vote.
So you're betting on it. It actually says chet here.
Yeah, because I'll tell you why. To have someone that doesn't do a vote to me is not as significant because a vote is a longer thing, if you will.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot more stuff going on. But a chet is one thing. You could, let's say, eat pork once in your lifetime. That's one sin. So to say only 4 people haven't done that one time of any of the mitzvot, that to me stands out more than a
Now,
vote.
you do realize everybody in the Torah world usually guesses like you just guessed.
And it's wrong.
It's called a guess.
Yeah.
And they'll argue at this point, now, mamish, it says chet because, and not once did the guys get up off their chairs
To look it up.
to go look it up. Would you believe me if I told you the word chet or any type of sin does not exist here?
I guess I would believe you because I know you, but normally I would not.
Tanu Rabbanan, right?
Yeah.
Arba Mesu Ba'itav Shel Nachash Ve'eluhen Benyamin ben Yaakov Ve'amram Avi Moshe Yishai Avi David Ve'kilav ben David. No lashon of sin, chet, avon, any type of sin is mentioned here. All it says is it was taught that 4 men died in Rashi, and it's uniform. This word Be'itav, it's taken from Daniel, say for Daniel, it's lashon eitzah. 4 men died because of the counsel or advice of the snake, and the 4 men are as listed.
Meaning because they had to die because of the sin of the snake.
Whatever that means. But there's no avon, there's no chet. There are 4 men who only died due to the advice or counsel of the Nachash. End of quote. Kind of changes things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you can add words if you want to, but you're going to be wrong because you're adding words. You could say, well, it means I didn't sin, but it doesn't say that.
It really doesn't say anything.
No, it doesn't. So it begs the question, what is it saying?
Right.
Right? So in Shabbos, which I didn't bring because, actually I might have brought it. I brought the Ein Yaakov of Shabbos, which is the same thing. It's a direct copy and paste for Shabbos. So this is the Shabbos, this is the Bava Basra, and the most geschmack perush that I saw in this was from our friend Chaim Volozhin of Nefesh Chaim, which I don't know if I'll quote from it or not. We'll see how it goes. So this isn't the same kind of Rambo shear that I usually give, and due to the circumstances and weather tonight, it's probably better that way. So I really have nice clockwork notes. Usually I'm not so much in order, but for the sake of our friends here and for present company, we're going to just do the notes, okay?
Cool.
It is your question after all, and my kavanah was just to answer the question thoroughly and not let Ari Lewis show down.
All right.
All right, so we have set up the question, correct? We want to say Eizel Lashon in the 2 tractates of Chet. What's the answer?
Is that it
Neither.
doesn't
It doesn't say it at all.
Yeah.
So again, that the obvious question that it begs, what is it saying based on what it says? All right. So again, we got Shabbos 55b, and we have Bava Basra 17a. And again, I'm just going to go over my notes very thoroughly. This could be a very quick shear. We'll see. Dalad Mesu Be'ita Shel Nachash. That's the 4 died due to the counsel of the snake. The first guy I'm going to go to, again, I'm going through all the classic commentators on this. You have Rashi Tosfos. In terms of Agaditas, you go to the Maharsha. He's a classic guy. And the Ein Yaakov is built for that very cause. And then you look around to see if anybody else adds any flavors to it when it comes to Agaditas. Rashi. Rashi has a very tricky lashon. I'm not trying to be exactly makbid on my translation here. I'm just trying to give over a mashma'ut. Because again, it's a twisted language in Rashi. Not fit for death, except for the gezerah of Misa on all of Adam's descendants, due to the counsel of the snake. So again, Rashi does not mention the chet. All he's saying is he's not rui, not fit for death, except the only reason why is there's a gezerah given to Adam Arishon's Toldosav of Misa. So, by that right, those 4 men, only because of that gezerah, they died. No, wait a minute, we're going to build on this, okay? We're going to get a very geschmack understanding as this builds. Let it build. Okay. You and Camerland, let it build. That includes you.
Yeah.
Now, in the Gemaras, you have what's called Lakutei Rashi. Different Rashis collected from different places in the Masorah, where Rashi gives maybe a different commentary, which he did. All right, so by Yishai, remember, there's different places in the Masorah. You're going to find a commentary for who? One for Amram. And you know what? I'll just bring that in now since we're doing it. What does it say by Amram? I think in the Alshech. Find the Alshech. Yeah. What does it say by Amram? He didn't sin, right? But what's like the Perush? I mean, sin, inverted commas.
Right, whatever this is.
It means he did not taste the sin, did not taste the taste of sin. Hold on, we're going to build on that.
Okay.
Let it percolate.
So, by the way, all 4, though, are different.
Well, in the later commentaries, in the Achronim, they're going to get a different
ways they did it.
A different personification, each one. What it meant in his own little world.
Okay.
So Amram, by the Alshech, did not taste the taste of sin. Hold on, don't make any conclusions. Let it
sit in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, the Iker is, why was Amram such a big gun in Mitzrayim? We know he was big, but why? Well, he didn't sin. And again, when I say that, I'm saying inverted commas for the sake of articulation, right?
Yeah.
We're going to build on that and remove the word sin altogether at the end. He was the Rosh Yeshiva in Galus Mitzrayim. Remember we talked about with Rabbi Nachman, I don't know if it was with you, but also in Texas, that the concept of a true Rebbe, Rosh Yeshiva, the concept of sitting in Yeshiva, Yazakit Yosha Yeshiva, makes Geirim. And we know that Geirim were a big part of Mitzrayim. So what was Amram's job? Collecting not only Bnei Yisrael, but Geirim. He is the head guy. He's the Rosh Yeshiva. He's the Rebbe in Galus. And then before that, it was called Yaakov. Before that, was called Yitzchak. Before that, was called Avraham. Before that, it's called Shem and Noach and the whole tradition. So Moshe Rabbeinu receives that from Amram.
Okay.
All right, that's him. The son of David, I didn't see anything that stood out. Yishai, Rashi explains in Sefer Shmuel that he's one of the guys that didn't sin, right? Or again, counsel of the Nachash.
Do you know which son of David?
I always read the Nukudot. Kaf Lamed Aleph Beis.
Okay.
However you pronounce it. I didn't look up the Nukudot.
Okay.
It's not Caleb. It's like whatever it is.
Kalman?
No. Kaf Lamed Aleph Beis.
Okay.
It's not Caleb, but it's pronounced like whatever it is. I didn't look. It's what I know that it's the one who was modest. He was laying in bed next to one of the women. I forget which one it was, and they didn't do anything in bed. It's like there's 3 dargahs of holiness. Yosef and Boaz, and then this guy. It was Mamish Shamor's bris.
Okay.
Shmir's bris. The other one is Binyamin. And what I saw in that was that the sons of Rachel, this is the Sforno, the sons of Rachel were very righteous. One of them was Yosef, and out of him he merited 12 sons, like the 12 Shvatim. Mm-hmm. And then Binyamin, the other son, why was he meritorious? Because he did not take in the counsel of the Nachash.
Right. Okay.
Right.
But he had 10 sons, but is that related? Or?
Not related. Just
okay.
There's great grace or merit to the 2 sons of Rachel.
Okay.
One would have merited 12 sons. are worthy of that, and the other one who didn't sin. Whatever that means, right? Again, we're saying that with pshuto.
Okay.
With me?
Yeah. So wait, just real quick. Yosef was worthy of having 12 sons. Yosef was worthy of having 12 sons, but
right, Benjamin also married like the 10 sons named after Yosef.
But Yosef only had 2 sons.
Right. But he was on a level to have merited 12 shvatim alone.
So he did something wrong, so to say?
No, because Rivka also merited 12 sons, but she only had 2 in the end for whatever reason.
Okay.
All right.
And just real quick, Benjamin was also merited to have 12?
His merit was that he didn't sin.
Okay.
But we know that he merited 10 sons, each one named after Yosef.
Okay.
So, all right. So that is the various commentaries on those commentaries from the Achronim based on the 4 who didn't sin. I know it doesn't say sin. We're just saying that for context, right?
Right.
All right. And by the way, the end of the shir, the goal is to understand why it doesn't say 4 that didn't sin, or 4 that didn't die from sin. But what is the real mashma'ut of what it says? What it does say? Who did not die from but only died from the council of the Nachash. Okay, Lakutei Rashi. Yishai lo avon. There's your avon. So Rashi says this, that Yishai did not have avon. Again, we know that's not chet, that's not sin. That means he didn't wake up late on Friday to go get his special deal from the supermarket.
So he didn't have a type of behavior.
He didn't have a learned behavior of rebellion, so to speak. It's different than chet. Chet is eating chaz during Yom Kippur, chaz v'shalom.
Right.
Like, out of your way to do something. Because you found a way to get Ben & Jerry's, Erev Shabbos. That's not exactly a chet, but it's not good for your soul.
So therefore, as of now, we'll go more, but Yishai could have done a chet.
Hold that thought, or show.
Okay.
Rabbeinu Gershom. Now, really, I need you to really start paying attention here. This is going to be very tight lumdus. Ready? Rabbeinu Gershom. Lo chet Adam. Eitza lachava. Okay, so there's something. Now we're going to start getting into a super conscious position. There's something. This is mashma from all the different sources that I found. Ready? There's something called chet la'adam. An Adamic chet. Okay, just keep it loose.
Okay.
And there's something else that is not a masculine Adamic Adam Arishon chet. I'm going to explain that later on.
Okay.
There's something called Eitza Lachava. Meaning there's a dodgy behavior that men can do that is not in the same darga as chet Adam. It's something else. Again, I'm going to explain that. I'm building it up, right?
Okay.
But just making your mind a division.
All right.
There's like your classic, Eve was wrong for giving Adam the fruit, and Adam was wrong for eating it and blamed his wife. We're talking very meat potatoes. We're not getting into pilpulim.
Yeah.
So there's something called just the masculine general rov b'nei oilam chet. I'm going to explain that. And there's something else. Something about counsel from the Nachash. I'm sure your imagination can work wonders here. Right? The Yetzer Hara seduces you as opposed to I'm going against the grain because I'm a rebellion. I'm a rebel. Right? I'm going to build it. Don't worry.
Okay.
That's Rabbeinu Gershom. Taisvis. The inyan of chet. They didn't have the inyan of chet. Rak shayach l'rov b'nei adam. There's 2 kinds of human beings in this world. Jewish, what's called Jewish human beings, for the sake of discussion, right? There are men who sin, and there are men who have no shaychus to sinning. There's rov b'nei oilam, and there's not rov b'nei oilam. Some people are born special. You understand?
Okay.
It's not exactly tzaddik versus Russia. Some people they live a life of sinning. And that's most people. Some people sinning is just not in their makeup.
But what would be the point of their existence? Because they're not.
Hold on, Arlo Show.
Okay.
We're gonna get that.
All right.
Exactly that.
Okay.
Exactly that.
All right. Good.
Don't think I'm embellishing here.
Okay.
But you hear that the idea is building?
Yeah.
Okay. You see how each one gives an angle and it's gonna hit.
It's all a little different.
Yeah, but they're all gonna hit. You're gonna see.
Okay.
Another Taisvis. There's a couple Taisvis. By the way, another Taisvis said the whole thing in Koheles. What do you mean, never sin? Koheles says, no man so holy in the world doesn't sin. All right. Another Taisvis, and the Ein Yaakov says on that Taisvis, see the Marsha. So what do? We saw the Marsha.
Right.
And the Marsha is going to say a couple different shatim. There's something called ksat chet eno roi lamus. There's a total sin and a partial sin. And the partial sin is not rui to die. I'm a bit dodgy. Some guys are totally dodgy. Some men are partially dodgy.
Okay.
That's one shot. Another one is they were not sinners for the majority of their lives. Some people sin all through their lives on some consistency, and some men have a block of the majority of their lives where they didn't sin. And again, in that word sin, you can have ksat sin versus full all-out sin.
Could you also have chet and avon in that area?
All of these things.
Okay.
But that's going to be the end goal, what you're saying now. Keep that also going.
Okay.
All right? So there's something called a sin versus being a sinner for a significant time, or a different non-Adam type of sin. Remember, we said that there's like an Adamic sin and there's a non-Adamic sin. And I'm going to explain that too.
Okay.
Then there's something called the Likutim in Ein Yaakov. The question is, how can you have 4 men who didn't sin? Again, the Perushim are playing with the word sin. They know it doesn't say it, but it's mashma, right?
Yeah. They have to describe it.
Right. And what's that called again? Lafi pshuto. Okay. This whole sugi is called Lafi pshuto. Because you see, number one, it doesn't say sin, and applying sin to that to make it conversible. But the very nature of that agadato is already Lafi pshuto. Because it doesn't make sense on the realistic level, like you're saying. The whole nature of man is to have free will and a yetzer hara and all these things.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, how do you have 4 men who never sinned and only died due to the counsel of the Nachash, and Moshe and Aaron sinned and died? Are they greater than Moshe and Aaron?
Wow. Okay. You want me to answer or what?
No, you hear the question. It's rhetorical.
Okay.
You hear the question.
Yeah.
The answer?
By the way, just throw that. This thing with King David and Yishai, right?
That's also in the sugya.
Right.
And what's the answer every time? They didn't sin. And almost every instance, they didn't sin.
You talking about King David and Aaron?
All the examples they give, don't make the mistake in thinking that these guys sinned.
But yet they want to make the example. They're making an example between King David and Yishai.
Right.
So that tells you that King David sinned, right?
But then the answer always is, don't think he sinned, because what you call a sin and what he did are not the same thing.
Okay.
That's kind of what's going on here.
Okay.
And there's the Jones A sin and what these guys are doing.
Okay.
You're not them. You, proverbial,
Right.
There's Rov B'nai Olam. You see, there's a distinction. I'm going to clarify.
Okay.
So Moshe and Aaron may have sinned, but they never sinned again. Or you can say they lived the majority of their lives
Without
and they never
sinning.
sinned.
Right. Because they said Moshe did 4 sins, right?
There's different opinions. The whole thing with he yelled at Aaron and things like that. But they're talking about in the desert with the water. They didn't believe that you didn't believe in me to sanctify me, right?
So 1 for sure.
But then the Gemara says, but they did believe in them. So how can it be? You said they won't believe in you, but they did believe in you. So the answer they give is they sinned but never sinned again. Hold on.
Okay.
So the idea is that there was the zuhama of the filth of the eitzah of the nachash. Now here's where we get into the commentaries. This cannot mean that they didn't sin, because gufa, everybody has a yetzer hara. That's just how we're created, and if it's for the sake of free will, everybody has to be tempted by their yetzer in order to have free will in the world. So what the commentator is saying is they have sinned early on in life. Obviously, you have to, right? But eventually they stopped being condemned and listening to their Yetzer, like we talked about in Sefer Tanya, the right way, Yetzer Tov Shoften, that your Yetzer Tov contends against your Yetzer, against the nature of sinning. For example, when you saw an old lady walk crossing the street, your Yetzer Hara said, gun it, Ari, run her over. And then your wife said, no, you lunatic, don't do that. Your Yetzer Tov would have said, what are you doing? You're like, oh man, I was being an idiot again. I'm sorry about that. Your Yetzer Tov says, you better believe you were doing that, but don't do that. So it's just a bodily urge. And either your Yetzer Hara says, yeah, man, do it. Or your Yetzer Tov says, what are you doing? Either way, you sinned. Right? Even with your Yetzer Tov, you thought to run over some human being. Right? That's some kind of avon or something.
So you're saying the thoughts, everyone has thoughts.
Everybody has some type of sinful something.
Okay.
But the question is, are you embellishing it and indulging in it in your Yetzer Hara? Or are you condemning yourself with your Yetzer Tov? If you condemn yourself through your Yetzer Tov, that's called the where is it? The Ksat Chet. You know? Because you if I upset you, even intentionally, right?
Or you would mean unintentionally?
Unintentionally, intentionally. I did something I shouldn't have done.
Okay.
I hurt your nefesh. I sinned. I'm never coming clean netter to the wall again with Ari Lewis. Boo-hoo, Ari Lewis show. Right? I hurt your nefesh, and that means I hurt my nefesh. But it could be I'm just having a really, whatever it is, justifiably.
Or let's say a situation where you didn't have a choice.
Something very serious happened. So even still, I harmed your nefesh, but it's a big difference than if you go out of your way to help me out, and I'm still just no good to you. How was the show, Rabbi Katz? Oh, it's horrible. Artie Lewis was there, and he was doing this and that. And, I hate an Artie Lewis show. That's just embellishing your evil Yetzer Hara. There's no excuse for that. Now the tshuva is very hard. Very hard. I intentionally hurt your feelings. I spoke less about you on Facebook. I told everyone stay away from you. Very hard to get that back. I embellished that Yetzer Hara. But let's just say you had a friend who was feeling sick and you couldn't come tonight, and everyone was counting on tonight's show, and I said, I never come with Ari Lewis again. And I was a bit more on me, and I didn't think about it. Again, these are poor examples, but the point is, I didn't embellish the Yetzer Hara. So after I thought about it, I'm like, look, Ari, I shouldn't have done that, man. I know you had issues going on with your friend, da-da-da-da-da, it's all good, we're made up. Right? I did tshuva on it. So it's again, these are loose examples, but it's a ksat chet. My Yetzer Tov beat me up over it. Now, obviously, you could refine these arguments into a more proper scenario.
Okay. And just to clarify, that means Amram and Yishai, these four men,
their Yetzer Tov beat them up. They never embellished their Yetzer Hara.
But they still had simple thoughts at some point.
At some point, they had to have, because that is how we're created.
Okay.
It's like saying Mark McGwire never had anything but a home run. That's not baseball.
Right.
There has to be some kind of contrast.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not Pleasantville.
That's right. Nobody bats 1,000.
And that's not human. It's not what you expect. There has to be grime in this world. There has to be conflict, contrast, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A chance for tshuva. But again, are you embellishing your evil, or are you dealing with it? So here's the big gun that I want to tell you. Ready? So what I can understand from this is, and this is from it was from the Rav Nefesh HaChaim, or where I saw it, I forget. Have you ever heard of the Chet Egel?
Of course.
Have you ever heard of the Meraglim?
Yes.
Have you ever heard of the destruction of the first and second temples?
Yes.
Have you ever heard of the putting Yosef in the pit?
Yeah. Correct.
Have you ever heard of the Chet of Adam Arishon?
Sure.
Okay, these are called Chet. And every generation has Rov B'nai Olam who partake in an Adamic Chet. You got that?
Every generation.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a thing called sin. And it's not you running over some old lady in a road because you're road rage. There's a generational Torah chet.
Where you're saying everyone does one thing?
It's like the generation succumbs to a lower level of avodas Hashem.
Okay. I haven't heard that before. Very interesting.
I hadn't heard it either.
Okay.
So when they say they died only of the Eitzah of the Nachash, right? Let's pretend, yeah? Let's pretend that right now there's a movement to put a treif temple up on the temple. And everybody got in on it. From Jews, everybody. Let's say Islam fell. and Erev Rav took over. It's on the headlines, right? And everyone wanted to put up a ridiculous Beis Hamikdash. Like the Mizbeach is off. You're going to puzzle at Silas, okay? And you have people supporting this. And let's say they did it. And let's just say Hashem punished us by letting it happen. Okay, 500 years from now, I don't know. But Hashem let us do it. You can imagine, right? Everybody now has batame their soul with the Zuhama a little bit more. They brought the Zuhama of the Nachash into their neshama, right?
Right.
But there were 4 men in the generation, right? There was the Rebbe of this one, the Rebbe of that one, a big Rosh Yeshiva, and the chief rabbi, whatever it is, right? And they were against it, and they said, no, it is wrong, and Am Yisrael is going to pay the price. And it comes out, in 200 years from now, those rabbis were right. They were right. And we're going to look back in time. Remember when...
Oh, okay.
I mean, remember when they wanted to build the Treif Temple? So that those 4 guys will stand out as the ones that didn't succumb. So those are the 4 guys, right? So...
I don't know.
Shalosh Shapah?
Little interruption, folks.
Shalosh Shapah? Alright, just turn it off. We'll start again. Turn it off.
Okay.
Turn it off. Okay, so we had to leave the premises. We're not in trouble. It was the Visions of Rebbe's coming through, and there's about 5,000 Chassidim in there. They were going to flood our area, so we had to just move. We're not in trouble. Don't worry. Everything's good. So there's something called a generational chet, right? So again, if they were going to put a Treif Beis Hamikdash up, because the whole generation fell to Erev Rav. It was a big calamity in Israel. All the frum Jews fell for it. And 4 big rabbis stood their ground. And 200 years later, it came out that those rabbis were right. And whatever fruit came out of that, right? We learned from Shabtai Tzvi what an anti-Messiah is. From the Frankists, we learned what a bad problem is, right? From the golden calf, we learned things. So every generation, I mean, look, the Shoah was probably just whatever it was. If you want to say it's the secular Jews in Germany or the Haskalah, whatever it is, it was a makkah, right? We got it. And the Judaism that we have today came out of that, for better or for worse. So every generation has the level of chet, of the door, of an Adam Arishon, chet to Egel, selling Yosef. The Vilna Gaon says these iterate every generation. And the Geula only comes when we stop selling Yosef, when we stop the sin of the spies, when we stop destroying the temple. So what that looks like in every generation, I don't know. I'm not a Navi to say, but it happens. So there are 2 kinds of people, the majority and not the majority, and the minority. And then in that paradigm, there are those that sin that are that, right? There's the selling Yosef people. There's the destruction of the temple people. And then there are those who are building the temple. So there, again, it comes down to, there are men that sin. Now do you understand what that means, Ari Luisho?
So that would be if they did not do what the generation did. Is that what you mean?
People that sin, sinners,
right,
are generational chet.
Yeah.
And then there are those that don't sin.
Right, so they're not part of the generation.
From the Eitzah of the Nachash. Those are the minority, and those that do not sin in the generational sin. You got that?
Yeah.
So what we have here is there really is no such thing in these midrashim of the word chet or avon or whatever word you want to use for sin. There is something called a non-Adamic sin, if you want to use that word sin, right? And we're showing what sin means. I looked through the Concordancia very quickly. It wasn't an exhaustive search. I didn't see anywhere where a man ever sinned. We never see the word chet, that Bob Jones sinned. What we do see is a sin offering. So what we have is a bunch of Agaritas and Lafib Shuto trying to understand what is sin. What it comes down to, I'm going to read my notes on this. I don't want to trust my own memory. Hold on. We are looking for the chachma of a sin. What is a sin? How do I do tshuva on Yom Kippur? I don't know. I need to know what a sin is. So we have these things, but they're not a this or that, and it's mamish lefi pshuto. Because as you saw, no one said these four guys didn't sin. And then the commentaries are saying lefi pshuto sin, but it doesn't even come down to that. It's a tool of vernacular to be able to discuss and articulate these things. But what we have is, one second, is the nafka mina of a mazel lekol ish. Right. So the biggest nafka mina is when you learn Evan Shlema, the Vilna Gaon's Book of Ethics. He deals with the soul that sins and Gilgulim. Why? Because it's not a black and white issue. You need to understand what sin is and where you are in the sinning universe. Are you one of the Rov B'nai Olam that is in the generational sin? Are you buying extra ice cream? Are you like Amram? Where are you in the sinning universe? It's not this Kabbalah Tanya that Tzaddik never sins. The Tanya doesn't say that. The Gemara doesn't say that. No one says that black and white, cut and dry. What we're saying is our tzaddikim and our Yetzer Tov shaften, our Yetzer Hara shaften, but even bigger than that, what sin is to you, that only you can answer the question, what kind of sinner or not sinner are you? Then you can work on your midas and your character traits and your refinement. And then you can really work on your mazel, right? Why does God give you a mazel that when you're 16, you tell your Yetzer this way or that way, or you're in a generation of this or a generation of that? So it really comes down to your personal relationship with God, and you have these midrashim not to idolize them or to make them into an avodah zarah of the men that never sin. No one ever said that. You need to know what sin is, especially in your avodah, and then you can really start to understand the wisdom of the commentaries that bring the wisdom inside, and then you see it's universal, it's for everybody. Maybe you sinned in this, we say even by Noah and Abraham. Noah wouldn't have been anything in Abraham's generation but his own generation. That could be saying, right, Noah did not succumb to the generational sin. I think it is saying this, that Noah didn't succumb to the generational sin, but in Abraham's generational sinning generation, where Abraham did not sin, perhaps Noah would have succumbed to what was rampant in Abraham's generation. That's definitely a valid idea. Right? If not shot totally, which I think it is. Anyways, with that said, may the Vision of Rebbe live well, and may all of everybody on the planet live well, and know your sinning nature, how to repair it, refine it, get rid of it, do tshuva. If you are sinning, maybe you're not sinning, and you think you're sinning, maybe you're doing a partial sin.
Maybe you're not sinning, but you are sinning.
That's the thing. It's not a this or that. You need to really understand yourself and your relationship with God, and then you can better understand the Torah. Do you understand this? What happened to you today?
You mean with our share or with behind what's going on? Yeah, actually, the generational sin to me is very intriguing, because if you take, for example, Yishai, and he didn't. What was the generational sin of the time? It'd be interesting to kind of figure that out. For example, Mitzrayim, it might have been Lashon Hora because Moshe noticed how quickly news spread. And maybe Amram didn't do Lashon Hora, and that's what that means.
I know in our generation, I don't know if it's the thing, but Zionism is a thing. Some people say it's great, some people say it's not. Teaching Torah to non-Jews. Some say no, some say yes. One of them could be a sin, right? We're advocating that Torah is universal for those that are kosher, right? And not to teach Torah to avodah zarah, but some people say close the door on even those who have rejected avodah zarah. So I'm saying it would be interesting to know what is a generational sin. The Vilna Gaon says it is all iterations of selling Yosef, the Meraglim, destroying the temple, all the things that we know from Bible reiterate. So every generation you are coming in a reincarnated soul, basically rejected or refined from those sins. And eventually you will only die due to the counsel of the Nachash, and then even that, when Mashiach comes, the Nachash will be gone. Ari Lewis Show, it's been a pleasure as always.
God bless and good night.